Hello and welcome to the Bonsai Show. Picking up from the last episode, we are looking at repotting, and in actual fact, one of the questions that I've just received through Facebook is around repotting and when is the right time. So I'm going to pick on this tree, which is a Japanese maple, an Arakawa, which is the Cork Bark Maple. And another arc back to last week is this is another good example of buying the trunk with a view that we can develop the top growth. It's a bit of a straggly tree. It needs work over a couple of years, but the trunk alone makes this tree worth the purchase. So this particular tree is about there, ready to pot. The buds are swollen, and I would suspect that in less than a week this tree will start to push out in leaf. So if we look at the next stage of actually finding a pot for the tree, there are a couple of guidelines that we can use. They're not hard and fast, really. The choice of pot is up to you. So these are just as a guideline when you are initially looking. But what we're looking for is a pot which is roughly 2/3 in length of the height of the tree. And this is, again, a difficult example because it goes a little bit straggly at the top, and once it's compacted it would be lower. This pot, as it stands, is about right for this tree. This is a beautiful pot, but slightly too short. Otherwise it would be a great contrast. And this other pot, which is a Warsaw ceramics pot, I think colour-wise would be very good. It is about the right size. We could consider it slightly too deep, and there are additional guidelines around the depth of the pot being about equivalent to the thickness of the trunk. But I still feel this one would probably be a little bit too deep to do the tree justice. So what I will be looking to do is to repot this tree back into the same pot, and I appreciate that the pot is not the best choice aesthetically for this tree, but this tree will be repotted into a good soil. It will be given feed, and it will be put away into the polytunnels in order to grow and for us to do that further work. So as the weather is slightly changeable today, we'll head into the polytunnel with this tree and we'll go through the process of doing a repot. Okay, so the chosen tree, as we discussed outside, and I'm quite glad I did come in because it is looking rather grey out there, and I'm also hoping that it doesn't start throwing it down of rain because it can be quite deafening with the polytunnel plastic and rain. But we'll get on with this. I'll explain what I'm doing, why I do it that way, and we'll step through the repot of this tree. So you'll see that I'm using two different trays here. That's primarily because we've got the space to do that, but we keep old soil in one pot and mix new soils in another tray over there. So we first need to remove the tree from the pot, and assuming that it had a good job done previously, then it will be wired and tied into the pot. So I've removed both of those from the underneath, which hopefully means it'll come out. Otherwise we have to go and get a sickle saw to get it out. But there we go. And we can see this one's had a repot not too long ago by the looks of that. And I would say that if you're in any way thinking of a repot, especially if it's a tree that is new to you, my advice would be to go ahead with that repot. At least you then know what condition the roots are in and what is in the pot, what mix it's in, and all of those other factors, so you're comfortable with the development of that tree and what you will do to it over the coming years, until the next repot, that is. So the next job for us is to start to look at raking these roots out. And as this one is already pretty loose, as we saw when we dropped it out of the pot, and a lot of the soil has remained in that pot, we're looking to remove around 25 to 30 millimeters, roughly 1 inch, all the way around the pot, so that we can refresh the soil and put it back in. Some large roots with matted ends, and we're going to take these off. So here is a good example, and I will cut these off, and then I will show you what we're looking at. Although there are fibrous roots within this, there's a number of larger roots that we ideally want to replace with fibrous feeding roots. So we've taken these thicker roots out. We will just finish prepping this tree a little bit more by raking some of the underneath off and seeing if there are any more of those thicker roots that we will remove. That would be about right. We've removed 25 or so millimeters all the way around. We know that there is space underneath the tree, and that also you need to remove for future growth. And we are going to put this tree back into the same pot. So at this stage, if you were using a new pot, then you would look to prepare that pot. It does have to be clean. You are better off being safe, particularly with maples, which are subject to verticillium wilt, which is a soil-borne issue. But this particular tree is going back into exactly the same pot that it's been healthy with. So if we were using a new pot, we would look to fit the pot mesh to stop the soil coming through the bottom, and to fit the wires to tie the tree in, which we will have to do. So for this tree, I've got 2.5 mil wire to do this. You could use 2 mil, but I tend to find that 2 mil can snap when you're tightening them down. So we choose a good length of wire, and for this particular tree we need 2 of these. And just for interest, we may well do more repotting in the upcoming episodes, but the tying in of pot mesh we covered in one of the November series articles about how to do that and how to make the butterflies that secure them in. When you then choose your pot to put the tree back in, you should take a look to see if there are any marks on the pot which would make a better front, and leave the marks at the back. So we'll choose this side as the front, and the reason for that is when we fit these tie-in wires, we're looking for a shorter length at the back of the pot and a longer length at the front to wrap over the pot and then do that tie-in towards the back, which we can then bury underneath the soil once that goes in. So hopefully it's quite visible there that one side is longer than the other. And there we go. That would be the pot prepared for the tree, and we are ready to go. As I mentioned, we use 2 trays for this. So I will swap these trays over. I will go and get the soil to make up sufficient to finish that off, but we put to one side the old tray and I've got the new one. I'll now just go and grab the soils. Okay, new soil, already mixed. What we are using here is, because it's a deciduous tree, a straight mix of 60% Akadama and 40% of pumice. If you imagine you live on one side of a road and you have a south-facing garden, and your trees therefore would be in more sun and more heat during the day, you would probably want a slightly more retentive, water-retentive mix. But if you moved on the opposite side of the road, your garden would therefore be north-facing, and you would probably get less sun, less heat, and you therefore may choose a slightly more free-draining mix. So it can be a little bit of trial and error, and indeed here at the nursery we're undertaking trials on soil mixes as we go. Okay, so what we're looking for is a layer to go underneath the tree, and for that, because I know that there's a lot of space in this pot, and this pot will give plenty of growth, root growth going forward, so I suspect if we keep this tree here at the nursery for development, that we may well not want to repot this tree for another 3, 4 or 5 years. If the tree speeds up and its development is a lot quicker than we thought, and we were looking to put it on the bench for sale, then we would most likely choose a more appropriate, aesthetically pleasing pot for the tree. So we put some soil in, and we look to keep an eye on the height, so that when we finish we have a good level between the top of the pot and the tree. This particular tree I think needs to go a little bit higher, which is a good thing, because when you look to finish your potting, you should place a mound of soil towards the centre of the pot, and effectively what we'll do is, as we put the tree in, we wriggle it down so that it flattens that out and pushes the soil into all of the underneath areas of the tree. What I'm also going to add is a fertiliser, and in this instance this is Oceana Root Boost. We add this fertiliser to all of our trees that we do repot on, and it has actually given us really good results in some of the Yamadori trees as well. So we've added a little bit of that to go underneath the tree. Right, so we've put it in, and we can see now that the tree is a little bit high in the pot, which is kind of where we want it to be. And what we would now be looking to do is wriggle the tree in, and it's gone quite firm, and that feels a good fit with the soil underneath. We'll then start to add a little bit of soil around the edges. And we need to push that down. So what we now need to do is make sure that the soil that we're putting in fills any air pockets, and obviously that could be just under the edge of the tree as we put it into the pot. So for that we use fingers and a chopstick. We put a slight bit of pressure on the soil and then push it down and underneath the tree. You'll feel a change in the way the chopstick goes in as soon as those cavities are filled. It will become a lot more solid underneath the chopstick, and at that point you know you've got enough down and underneath. As you go around the pot, you may well feel some air pockets as you go, and you scoop up a little bit more soil, put it in, and go back to finger pressure and the chopstick. Feel a little bit more in this area. And you'll notice that I'm not overfilling it at this point in time, and that is because as we get this compacted may be the wrong word, but as we get it pushed into and fill those air pockets, we want to leave a little bit of space around the pot for us to add a little more fertilizer and then top it off. We're now back to the front of the pot, which has got the longer wires on it, and we are going to look to tie these off. So we will pass the wire across to the back of the pot, and sometimes you have to go round any roots, sometimes you can go underneath any roots, as we have done at the right hand side of this tree. So with a pair of gym pliers, we cross the wires over. We would then put the gym pliers on. We give that wire a really good pull and then twist. Pull and twist. There's one. The next one, we are going to have to go around the roots. So we'll do exactly the same here. Pull and twist. This tensions the wire, make sure it pulls nice and tight, and then as you twist it takes up that slack. So those are in. The tree is nice and secure in the pot, and we will cut off the excess, push them down into the soil, and then we can carry on filling the tree over. As I mentioned, we add a little more fertilizer around the edges. You'll find that the Oceana will start to produce mycelium very quickly. So particularly on Yamadori, where you may not have any existing mycelium from when the tree was collected, the Oceana does a fantastic job of reintroducing that into the root system. So all I'm doing is pushing this Oceana gently into the cavity, and we will then fill it over, make it look a little bit pretty, and then we'll take this outside and give it a good watering. And the key to that watering is, although you may have pre-sieved your soil, there is bound to be some dust which is gathered in the pot, and you water the tree until the water flowing from the bottom of the pot is clear. If you can still see any slight discoloration, then you continue watering to get rid of all of that fine dust. So we'll take this one outside and we'll give it a good watering. Okay, we now have water running clear through that pot, and I'm quite happy that we will put this tree away in our polytunnels over the back and start to undertake a regime of feeding and styling on this tree, which may well include defoliation or partial defoliation a little bit later in the year. So that's it for this episode, and a bit of a shout out to Mark, who posted the question right at the beginning about when to repot. So I hope that has answered that question, and from me, I think that's it for now. We will see you in the next episode. Thank you.